want answers.
I want the truth.
You see, if you don't press record at the beginning, and Joe Rogan probably made this mistake, just missed that goal, don't you? All of these people listening have missed this banter about bordoodles, builders, about connection to source. All of these people missed out on that, and that's a crime, and that's a crime for which we are guilty as podcasters.
We are guilty,
but we'll get over it, won't we? It'll
we
be
will.
okay.
It'll be okay, and that was just a moment that you and I were meant to share.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, that feels like a little bit of a letting yourself off there, but that's okay.
Totally, but that's okay.
You're allowed, beautiful soul. We're allowed to forgive, are we not?
Completely.
So the agenda is clear. What do you require? How can I be of service to you today?
Well, I usually like to start my podcast off inviting the guests using their ruling number. If you're okay with doing that.
Yeah, I don't know what that means, but I'm fine with it.
Well, I gave you a little bit of that in the voice message that I sent you.
My ruling number 77.
No, your ruling number is 29112.
Ah, yes, you said that number has insane power.
Yeah.
Bad, actually, but that's what you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Let's do that. Go. Let's have it. So what do you... Right, now I know what page we're on. Well, I know what book we're reading. Perhaps not what page we're on. What do I do now?
You're looking at me for guidance, but I'm like, well, I don't know what to do. You've been doing this for longer than I've been doing this.
Well, mate, I don't know if that's true.
Yes.
Tell me again what my ruling number means, and I'll react to that. My short-term memory is not what it was.
Well, let me first introduce the fact that we're on a podcast, because then...
Yeah, context.
Context. So, hello and welcome everybody to the Real Lies, Real Lies podcast. I am your host, Georgina Grace. I'm joined today by the magnificent Ben Hawkes. Thank you so much for blessing us with your presence, Ben.
I'm delighted to be here. That's a new experience. Word magnificent and my name being
It came to me, so I guess that was the word that you needed to hear.
I'm up for it. I will sit here in my luminous magnificence and however is required. You, the listener. You, the...
So Ben is a ruling 29112. What's interesting is that my last guest that I had on the podcast was also a ruling 29112. But these people are they're not everywhere. This is not a super common energy, which is pretty interesting within itself. I asked you some questions before you came on to the podcast, and some of those questions were, have you ever been challenged by being in a physical reality?
It's really interesting, the comment you made about just being baffled by what humans do.
Yeah.
And my wife listened to that. She laughed because, well, my mother tells a story of, so we grew up in London, which is in England, by the way, for anybody listening. Best place in the world. It's not now, really. It's gross and horrible now.
The spiritual center of the world, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. The dark heart of the world. Yeah. When you go in the city of London, you know it actually energetically, or at least I do now. And you see all those dragons, hint not dinosaurs, on the architecture and the buildings. But I was sat by this main road in London with my mother, possibly my brother, and we were waiting for a bus to go on some sort of trip. And there's a cemetery by the bus stop, and there was a service going on, and people kind of queuing up, waiting to see the coffin, waiting to give blessings, whatever it might be. And I turned to my mother and said, "Mummy, are they queuing up to get buried?" And my mum loves telling the story, and I roll my eyes each time. But Now, in the context of what you said in terms of being baffled by generalized human behavior, that makes absolute sense.
Mm,
Um, Especially from a child, especially from a kind of expression of pure consciousness and pure awareness, just to look at a thing and go, that doesn't really make sense. That doesn't make sense at all.
no,
So I do find people baffling, wonderful, beautiful, interesting, but also baffling.
baffling. Yeah. Yes. And have you ever felt a sense of strange longing?
Yeah, I was thinking about this one. I think because Rachel V said that I haven't had many lives on this earth or many incarnations. I
Mm.
don't, I, I don't know whether I attach. Well, it's Rachel, so it's got absolute, it's got experience and truth behind it, and that kind of makes sense to me. But I think if I came from anywhere, if I have a home planet, I think that home planet had lakes and seas. I think maybe I come from the same planet as Kevin Costner's hit Waterworld, possibly. You may know that, dear listener, because it was shite and nobody watched it. But yes, I have a sense of peace by water. So yeah, I don't think I'm from here, but I do like it here. I feel a little like Kevin Spacey in K-Pac now. Before he was a paedophile, it's when it was okay to like him. Actually, no, Q. He's always been a paedophile.
Yeah.
Allegedly, Kevin Spacey's lawyers. But yeah, I do feel that sense of a discombobulation on planet Earth,
Mm.
which is fine. Which is fine. We'll get through it together.
Well, they're all just small little examples of that you're not from here.
Yeah,
You're not. Your soul is not. And like Rachel says, you've had some incarnations as a human, but your soul itself, where it's from, is not this planet.
well,
Yeah. And so when you're a 2911 2, that number within itself, it starts with a 2 and it ends with a 2, 2911 2.
yeah,
And the 2 energy, we're now in the 2020s. The 2 energy is a very high frequency of love.
yeah,
And it's when you are someone who's a 2911 2, which you are, the kind of love that you actually embody. I say embody, but I don't necessarily just mean your physical body. Um,
mm,
is a love that you're bringing to this earth. It's part of your purpose, part of why you have to have a podcast and broadcast your frequency to the world.
whoa.
Yeah.
It's funny. I've had depression, whatever that means now,
Mm.
for a lot of my adult life.
Hmm.
And I was sat in a therapy session with this very upper middle class psychologist in Bath. And I was talking, and she stopped me and said, "You talk a lot about yourself." I said, "It's therapy." I thought that was the idea. And she said, I think I might be picking up narcissism. And I was like, I left. I left quite quickly. I
Mm.
didn't punch her dog or anything, but I left quite quickly and went to find my mother and tell her all about it. And this will sound narcissistic, but bear with me because I think a lot of people are feeling like this, and it bears saying to make space for people's feelings and thoughts about this matter. That I have often thought that I was meant for greater things, not in the kind of Jesus complex way, but doing something more important than I am presently doing. And it's an interesting one that a gatekeeper to mental health had kind of hexed me with this narcissism word, which is an awful one. It's a nasty, nasty, charged term. And I wonder whether there is a concerted effort, conscious or unconscious, to cast a net over people to stop them from raising to the frequency at which they're meant to be emitting and meant to be broadcasting. That we've got this inbuilt inbuilt arrestor wire, this inbuilt speed. What's the thing they have in vans and cars where they can't go over a certain speed?
Oh,
No,
yeah.
it's gone. But you know what I mean. You know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder whether we have been. Well, I'm not wondering. I know we have. We've been programmed by the system, by the controllers, by whoever, by the group that run the show, to keep ourselves down. And the narcissism play was part of that. But yeah, am I meant for better things? Well, I'd probably argue, am I meant for better things? Because I feel like I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing right now.
Mm.
But to anybody listening with that kind of voice that says, you're meant to be doing something else, this isn't the life you're meant to be living. This isn't a life a human, light embodied, should be living. Listen to the voice. Don't think it's because you're an arsehole. Don't think it's because you have ideas above your station. Think it because it's true. We were all sent here for a purpose. Unless you're an NPC, and if you are, you're probably not listening to this podcast.
Mm.
And you're probably not aware you've got an inner dialogue because you don't have an inner dialogue. But if you're not an NPC, one of the things I saw the other day was a great video on Instagram, an American, they're always fucking Americans, talking about how he felt downtrodden because he didn't have an inner monologue. He put himself in the victim hierarchy, I think, between pink-haired, rancid transsexuals and victimized black people. He put himself there, people without an inner monologue. He was very pissed off about the whole thing. But anyway, I digress. That voice is telling you you are meant for something else and something better because you are meant for something else and something better. Because if you think about it for too long, none of this makes any sense whatsoever. None of the ruling, the word almost came back to me, but that speed van thing just then. It will pop in at a ridiculous moment. We'll be satanic pedophiles running the world, and I'll go, regulator. There it is. Satanic pedophiles, do it again. If you think about it, none of this makes any sense whatsoever. My life makes sense to me because I woke up and I decided what to do with my day. That makes sense to me. But I also sent my daughter off to a nursery to be educated, to be quote unquote parented by somebody else. There are 7.8 billion people in this world. How many kids are there? I don't know, probably 2 to 3 billion at this point. A large proportion have been sent off between the hours of 8:30 and 3:30 to be with someone other than their parents. That doesn't make a great deal of sense to me. Although my wife won't let me homeschool our child because she believes homeschooled children are weird and crazy. But she's going to wake up as things go and it will be fine. Interestingly, she's just listened to the reading you did for her. And the only thing she disagreed with was her attitude to authority, because she's a people pleaser and she always defaults to authority. But this is my theory, and challenge me on this if it's wrong. My theory is your reading was of her higher self, her true self, what she's actually meant to be. And a couple of weeks ago, she turned to me and said, I don't think I want our next child to be vaccinated. And I didn't react. I responded. My reaction was kind of doing that happy fat boy cake dance inside. But my response was, interesting. I got suave. I got quite suave. Interesting. What's brought you to that conclusion? It was dogs, actually. It was dogs and vaccination because we didn't vaccinate the dog. And it started, I was talking to a vet last week, a holistic vet, nice guy called Nick Thompson. He's on the podcast. And we were talking about this idea that people are so much nicer to their dogs in nutritional terms and medical terms than they are to themselves. And God bless her, bravest woman I know. She has to be. She fed the dog raw, wouldn't vaccinate her, any of that stuff. But she'll still happily go to McDonald's. Well, she can eat what the fuck she likes. She's 3 months pregnant. You know, all bets are off. No dramas. You want some ice? No dramas. You want some frozen peas? Fine. Do you want some coal? I'll go down coal. That's all good. But there is this odd thing that people are kind of happier mistreating themselves than they are their parents. But again, I digress. So if you're listening to this and you're feeling that itchy that you're meant to be doing something different, then you are meant to be doing something different. And everything about the matrix, the illusion, has been put together to quieten that voice in your head.
Mhm.
And if you sit down and think about it, you will see that is absolute truth, because they are layers. They are at the whole world is layered. What I love about this world is you can sit there and you can think about the plain point postulate. And I forget who thought of that, but it's the idea that there are no straight lines in nature. So for a straight line to, you've got to apply it onto nature. You've got to make that shit up. It's an illusion.
Mhm.
It becomes slightly less of an illusion when it's fences and borders and buildings and whatever, but ultimately it starts as an illusion because nature is perfect. Nature's a bit curvy. Nature's a bit round. Nature's a bit chaotic. We love it like that, but you have to put a straight line on nature. So if you think about the systems that are overlaid onto our prime reality to create this corrupted one, you've got two sets of systems. You've got the mind prison, you've got the physical, legal, financial prison. And all of it is designed very well to stop you from listening to that voice in your head.
Mhm.
It's pretty sick. It's pretty disgusting, but it is what it is. It's perfect. It makes absolute sense. So we've got a couple of choices. We can live in it. We can be suppressed by it. We can learn to navigate it. We can reject it. The path is probably a version of all three. But yeah, don't listen to that. Don't listen to those big, loud voices. I'm listening to a big, loud angle grinder right now. I tell you, our next door neighbors must be the unhappiest people in the world because they've been trying to do things to their house for 8 years. God love them.
Mhm.
They're a
You know,
challenge.
you know
I
what I've
know
learned,
that to live in my heart.
what I've learned recently is that your house is just an extension of your body.
Mm,
So,
100%. Which
mm.
is why my job is not to get fucked off by that angle grinder. Because if I get fucked off at the angle grinder, the universe is going to go, Ben's having a reaction to an angle grinder. What does he need right now? More angle grinders. Send the angle grinders. And that's but it is what it is. It's fine. They're just challenging me to live in love. I love you unconditionally, neighbors, even though you are. But where were we? So yeah, control systems. I mean, to my mind, we've got two control systems. As I say, we've got the mind control system, we've got the legal financial control system. The legal financial media control system, everybody knows. We've got music that's done at 440 hertz to make us feel violent and discombobulated. We've got a birth certificate system that puts us out into a legal system as debtors. We've got the birth certificate system that takes our creative energy, securitizes it, monetizes it, trades it, and then use it to prepay our debts and pay off whatever the fuck those people want to do. We've got income tax that is there to pay off the interest on the debt secured on our creative energy. We've got a legal system, as I say, that sees us as guilty, guilty as charged. One of the fascinating things that was pointed out to me the other day is you're never innocent. You are either guilty or not guilty. But the human can never be innocent in the eyes of the law. Fucking crazy. Sorry, not law, legal system. So we've got these overlays. We've got the mind overlay, which is the one we started on, which starts in school, starts with the parents, starts with the group that run this world, understanding that we have the subconscious and the conscious is 10% and subconscious is 90%. And the conscious can be kicked into touch by fear, by confusion, by repetition. So what am I saying? I'm not particularly sure. I'm on a podcast, so I'm speaking. But what I'm saying is that anybody listening needs to understand that you are perfect. You are connected to divine consciousness, that there is nothing you're not capable of, that there is no question that you can't answer, that all knowledge is available to you right now, and you can live in peace and happiness and joy and abundance and love. But there is a group of 1 to 3% of 7.8 billion people who really don't want you to. And they don't want you to because they're fucking terrified of you. And they're fucking terrified of you because you have a consciousness bomb inside of your head and your heart that can destroy their world in a heartbeat. If 5% of everybody listening to this, wrong. If 5% of everybody in the world realized who they were, this thing would be over and right quick. Nothing. The entire matrix runs on our energy. And people don't really understand that. I mean, I'm in running battles with HMRC, so our IRS, our tax regulator. and they want me to give them information about some stuff that I know. And I said, well, I have a right to remain silent. So tell me why I need to speak up. Tell me why that right does not apply to me. Why do you get to tell me what to do?
Mm.
No answer. Because they don't understand it. They don't understand that sort of pushback. I know a guy who's got 100 fines for the ultra low emission zone in London. And he's just put them in his living room in a little pile, like a student might put Stella cans. And he just doesn't respond. Can you guess what happened as a result of his non-respondence?
Nothing.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Because the matrix runs on our energy. And if we choose to withdraw our energy, the game's up. That's the whole thing, folks. That's it. That's all there is your energy, their system. You give it to them, the system runs. You take it away, the system fails.
So good what you're saying. And you said a lot.
I won't listen.
It was awesome. It was like one gigantic download that you got. It was
Cool. It is.
awesome. There's so much that you said, so much. And, I do a lot of work with women who have had traumatic birth experiences, and I help them kind of navigate life after a traumatic birth kind of thing. And I've also support birth, and I've done a lot of research into birth and the history of birth and the history of women. And you triggered something for me when you said about you send your daughter off to a nursery. And part of what I've learned with the research that I've done is, and also what I feel as a woman, is that we were never meant to raise children in isolation.
No. That's how I rationalize it.
Yeah.
And it's a reasonable rationalization because she comes back learning new things. She comes back learning new words. I mean, there's no greater joy as a mum or a dad than hearing your son or your daughter say a new word.
Totally.
Like I'm gonna struggle not to say a name, but I never say a name on podcasts. Mine started saying disgusting the other day. Just this little person. No, she's not a person. This little girl like going, "That's disgusting, Daddy." She's not from Jamaica, and it's great. But it makes absolute sense. Children are raised by the village, right? So we don't have a village, so we need to recreate the village. And
exactly.
The decision we made about our nursery is based on they're lovely people. They cook food for the kids. It's in a church. It's a nice place run by nice folk. So that's the extension of our village. And when there are trips, we go on the trips. We both go on the trips. I'm probably the only dad, but it is what it is. And that's because the other dads have to go and do shit between 9 and 5 because that's the way it is. Somebody to play guitar for the Christmas concert. I'll go and play guitar for the Christmas concert wearing a stupid fucking jumper. And it was all good. But no, I don't think you have to feel bad about that. I don't think anyone has to feel bad about that. We do what we have to do. And the system is still there. So we must exist within it to an extent, but we need to mitigate harm and injury from it. And no doubt your nursery is a magical place, and the nursery you picked for your bairn is a magical place. But what interests me is this idea that women are attacked by this pregnancy system, by the midwifery system. And I'll go into a bit more detail. So my wife is a bit older. She's a geriatric, according to the midwifery system. Yeah. There's the first insult. There's the first curse. Thank you very much for that. And there are apparently higher markers for certain risk areas with baby.
Yeah.
So we go for the scan last Saturday. It goes very well. Baby's looking good. We can see the nose. We can see a couple of fingers. It's the size of a fucking prune, but you can see various things. And they check the back for an indication that there might be a risk of Down syndrome.
Yeah.
And she said, no, it looks fine. And I spoke to a friend of mine who's a medical doctor. He used to run oncology for one of the largest diagnostic companies in the world. And she said those machines are set up very, very specifically. So the measurements will spit out high risk for Downs. All is good. Then on Wednesday, I'm in the garden and my wife walks out in tears. She's just had a phone call from one of the midwifery team saying that the baby has a high risk of Downs. Okay, fair enough. Respond, not react. So tell me what a high risk is. 1 in 125, 12.5 in 1,000. I was like, why did they bother calling you? Well, low risk is 1 in 150, and we're at 125. Why did they bother calling you? So no problem. We'll go for the test. But, we've got a lot of trauma already built up in my wife. It's disgusting what they're doing to her. And we go there. We have the test. Treat my wife like a pinkish, and she hates that. And then they give us a letter. And the letter says, chance 1 in 124. Risk high. I'm looking at this letter thinking, hang on, what dark magic is going on here? That they've reinvented reality to call 1 in 124 high. That's not high. That makes absolutely no sense at all. I've got more chance of being killed in a vending machine accident than my new kid has of having Downs. And then I speak to my friend, the medical doctor, and she says, Ben, it's bullshit. Okay, cool. That's a good answer. I like that. But why is it bullshit? Because ultimately with these things, with these pathways, a load of quote unquote knowledgeable doctors get together and decide the numbers. They get to decide an algorithm where certain factors are plumbed in, such as age, ethnicity, location, diabetes, blah, blah, blah. And you get a number. But it's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. And I think back to the first one and how bad they made my wife feel for not breastfeeding. And you just think this wondrous, beautiful, divine process where literally a fucking portal from another dimension appears in your body and this soul comes in. I pointed this out to my wife the other day. Did you realize that you had a portal in you and you will again? Well, that's a bit fucking West, but it's true. How else could it happen? How else could this soul come in but having a fucking Stargate around the navel? Happy days. But they take this process and they take this being, the feminine, the creator of all. God's a girl. Spoiler, but God's a girl. It is what it is. Get over it. And I'm not a feminist, by the way, not in that sense. But they use this system and they weaponize all of this guilt and this trauma and they just pack it all on. I feel so fucking sorry for you guys. You don't need my pity, but I feel so fucking sorry for you that you have to put up with that unbelievable behavior. It's grim. It's disgusting. It's satanic. I mean, the lady who put me in touch with Rachel, beautiful soul called Madeline Greenhill, she's had 6. Now, I interviewed her and she told me about
Yes,
being induced.
I loved that episode.
Yeah. And we were talking about being induced. And this idea of the baby, this poor thing sitting in this dry womb, life-giving fluid drained out. For fucking what? For fucking what? Disgusting. But you do start to get an indication of the inverse nature of the system, the dark nature of the system. And we can go into, abortion as blood sacrifice, etc., etc. But when you rip away everything and look at it, you've got to realize that we are working within a system which is not set up for our benefit in any way, shape, or form. If you can take the force of creation and treat it so badly, if you can take kids and treat them so badly, then what the hell are we doing? But one shouldn't get angry about it. Don't get angry, don't bother, because evil doesn't exist. It's just an absence of love. So it's a very difficult, the awakening piece, it's a very difficult proposition. Very difficult indeed. And I went through the angry phase quite quickly. But I know a lot of people are still bouncing around in there. You've got this, they're still within fear. They're bouncing between probably fear and lack of understanding, just under understanding. And that's where they want everybody. When you look at the frequencies, you look at the bell curve and the distribution, where they want everybody is somewhere between fear and just below courage. And if they can keep them there, then they've won.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm very good at keeping them there. Very good indeed. But yes, I don't think you've asked the question, and I think I've just spoken. But yeah, talking about the guilt. That's it. That's it. Guilt. The guilt of being a mother, of being separated. And I understand that entirely. And A, you shouldn't feel it for a variety of reasons, but B, understand the system is set up to make you feel that.
Oh, and it goes back such a long time. Such a long, 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 long time.
Mm.
Did you know that land used to be passed down from mother to child, not father to child?
No, I did not.
So there's an incredible book written by a woman named Jane Hardwick Collins. She's an Australian woman, but she is like she's extraordinary. She's written, oh, the book is called Her Story. And essentially, this book, she does a very detailed summary. It's like 21 pages of the history of women.
Yeah.
And in this book, she talks about how because women birth, it
Mm.
made sense that women ran the land.
Mm.
We naturally give life, so we give life to the land. So
Yeah.
we were termed mistresses of the soil.
Mm.
Made sense that the land belonged to women. And women, when the matriarch and the womb was seen as a powerhouse, was seen as God,
Yeah.
women were so revered. There were statues of women. The whole village, the whole communities would be around the ebbs and flows of the women in the village. And so land was passed down from woman to child, not father to son, because we are the land essentially. And it was even so like the woman was seen as the most significant species, so much so that there used to be this rule that if a woman got sick of her husband, if she kicked him off their property and he
Mm.
spent 3 consecutive days away from the property or off the property, all entitlement. He was rid of all entitlement.
I'm
Yeah.
triggered.
So, and birth particularly, um, sorry, Lola, you just cannot dig at your bed like that. Once oh, she incessantly digs at the bottom of her bed and it's just, I don't know if you can hear it. She'll start humping it soon. She's very,
Great impression there.
yeah. So, back to birth, was always women's domain. There are
Mm.
there are there are cases of or stories of when a woman goes into her birthing time, all the women of the village, that was like if you didn't get invited to the woman
Mm.
on your street, her birth, then you were like outcasted. That was the biggest, it's like not being invited to a wedding. It's like that.
Oh,
And
Michelle Obama not being invited to Beyonce's baby. No, that level of social
like
ups.
exactly. So it was like that. But the women would come and they'd bring bottles of wine and they would they wouldn't just stay for the birth. Obviously, they wouldn't bring out the bottles of wine until the baby's born, but um they would be for this woman and they would be there for days and days after the birth. They would look after her, they would feed her, they would cook, they would clean, but it would also be a massive riot because the men weren't allowed. They used to block up the keyholes in the door to make sure the men couldn't even see what was going on. It was women's mysteries, you
Yeah.
know. And there were they used to be called the Three Sisters. Pretty sure that's the term, Three Sisters. And so birth has always been considered dangerous. But
Mm.
originally it was considered dangerous in the sense that a woman not just possesses a portal within her, but opens up a portal. And
Whoa.
yeah, opens up an actual portal. And so birth was considered dangerous because you're opening up a portal to all these other dimensions and what could come in. So the Three Sisters would show up to the birth to the space with the women, and their whole job was to protect and ward off.
Yeah.
These were the original midwives.
Crumbs. It all starts to make sense now.
Yeah. Midwife meaning wise woman.
And you can see why they make the whole thing so traumatic. I mean, one thing that fascinates me, we might be making all this up. We
Mm.
might be just a bias and our perspective reality to this whole thing. I don't think so, but we might. And you start to wonder whether a portal is opening at the time of birth. So if you want to charge the world with negative entity and negative energy, what are you going to do? You're going to make that as traumatic as possible.
Oh,
Because what
yes.
you experience fear and trauma, your energy body starts to attenuate. It starts to minimize. The
Mm-hmm.
protection starts to go down. What happens when you're in fear and trauma? Where everybody knows that jinn will go hunting in pub car parks because they will find not the detritus of society. 3 years ago, you probably would have found me there. No, that's fair enough, actually. But you find people who are desperate, people who are lonely, people who are unhappy, people who are ready to be subject to psychic attack. So
Mm.
fuck me, another layer of the matrix comes off.
Yeah.
A portal is opened. What do we want to come out? Pure energy, pure creation, i.e., new baby, new life. But what else can come out if everybody there has been primed for fear and trauma? Jinn,
Mm-hmm.
demons,
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Yeah,
Fuck
you
me.
can literally have walk-ins come into the to actual baby and to the
Yeah.
woman. It's pretty full on. And I've just actually been reading another book called Womb Wisdom. And this book confirmed so much for me in that it talks about ley lines on the earth and it talks about the portals on the earth, except they call the portals womb spaces of the world. And
Are
people,
hospitals on ley lines?
sorry,
I guess hospitals must be built on ley lines because they're
yeah,
important buildings, aren't they?
yeah. And if you think of them like womb spaces and portals being opened up with and in the book talks about how birth would happen in these womb spaces because it was like ultimate kind of protection and healing, and now hospitals, and I don't know if you are, the things that happen in hospitals, whether you're giving a birth or not,
Oh
utterly
yeah,
traumatic. Everything that it's like in one place. It is so this energy of darkness, of trauma, of abuse, of control, of manipulation is like all manifested in one place.
yeah,
And usually hospitals are layered as well. And so there's the underground layers where, the psychiatric wards usually are. The emergency ward is usually at ground level.
yeah.
And then you'll have the birthing ward above that. So you're birthing and opening up a portal, and you're birthing on top of people who have psychiatric problems. Obviously, they're, dealing with lots of attachments and demons,
And
right?
then making its way through. Don't forget you've got the morgue. Don't
Exactly.
forget you've got laundry. Don't forget you've got waste management. Don't forget you've got clinical waste all down there on the bottom.
No one's going around a hospital with a sage stick, Ben, you
No,
know?
no, they're not, are they? No
No
one's going
one.
to have fucking
And
crystal
so
on
I'm
board
just,
here.
the hospital is a place for emergencies
Yeah,
and nothing else.
if you get
And
broken,
if you
you
get
go.
broken, if you go to the hospital, but to give birth, uh-uh,
No.
no
About
way.
the lights as well. Think about the lights. Think about the air
Um,
quality. Think about the Wi-Fi being plumbed around there. You're walking through an electromagnetic fog. You're under a rain of LEDs disrupting you at the cellular level, and
mhm,
there's no air circulation,
mm-mm.
evidenced by the constant smell of cabbage and cheese.
And psychologically, you're surrounded by people in, white or, uniform, aka authority, beeping sounds, all of this. It's all for a very, very, very long time. It was, the church ages and ages ago, like thousands of years ago, made a decision that they need to take away the power away from women in their birthing time. So
Mm.
there was a time where midwives were your community wise women. They
Mm.
knew about how to handle and how to manage different birthing complications because that wisdom was passed down to them from their grandmothers and, and that it was just known. And if you were a girl, you grew up knowing about birth because you grew up around it.
Mm.
So birth and everything to do with the womb and being a woman was it as much as it is to do our makeup these days and put our hairs a certain way. It's like it was that, but all the essential stuff called birth and menstruation and there's this really, really powerful ancient South American proverb.
Mm.
And it goes like, at menarche, which is a woman's first bleed,
Mm.
at menarche, a woman meets her power. Through menstruating, a woman practices her power. And at menopause, a woman becomes her power.
Mm.
And I'm just, you know, and that's not at all the narrative that gets taught at all. But going back to the history, it was the church decided, no longer women's domain. We need to take over essentially. Like I'm very much just going over the top of the whole thing. But yeah, it was really the church that was like, so the midwives used to be the women of the community. They would come to the birth, take care. They moved from the three sisters, warding off. They still had people doing that, but they were people from the church would come and do that. And then
But
midwives were then the community wise women that knew about birth. It was all women. And then the church didn't like that. So then they created men were the only ones that were allowed to be educated. And so this is when the transition started to happen from birth was dangerous because you open a portal and what could come in to birth is now dangerous because of the woman's body. The danger now exists in her body, and men started studying birth. And the only way they could understand birth is to relate the women's body as mechanistic. So all of the medical terms, when they talk about birth, it's all a very mechanistic language. Nothing happens mechanics. Every birth is different. There's no like phases of labor or stages of labor. That is all mechanistic. It doesn't happen like that whatsoever. And so, my opinion is that women are the most powerful species on the planet because we can literally give life. God is a woman. Spoiler alert. But if you're a power hungry, very minute group of people, that's who you're going to attack. But to attack the women, you've got to do it through the men. You've got to break down the men, the
yeah,
protectors of the women, which has been going on for millennia, the attack on men and thus the attack on women. So,
yeah, no, 100%. Now, I suppose you've got to remember that from the church, you can trace back to the Roman Empire because the Roman Empire simply rebranded. Roman Empire, you trace back to Persia. Persia, you trace back, and you find the ultimate source of this power.
mm,
One thought experiment we can do, because I've read this, is that all of this started to go wrong when masculine energy became preponderant in the world.
oh,
And the Atlantean experiment, that was the idea that men should try ruling for a couple of millennia.
mm.
And look where it got us. Some men are powerful, but most of us aren't. And we all should be. No, I accept. I accept a bit of a loaded negative term. I I like my role as protector. It
Yeah.
feels natural to me. I don't like it because I get to exert power. I don't like it because I get to be aggressive. I like it because it's what I should be doing. I should be hunting and gathering. I should be the breadwinner. I should be there to create a space for my girls of all ages. Now, that's my job. I'm cool with that. I'm not meant to be a house husband. I'm meant to be present. I'm meant to be loving. I'm meant to be there to teach my girls a different side of life.
Mm,
I'm not meant to be the woman, and the woman isn't meant to be me.
mm,
You know, working isn't an exercise in empowerment and feminism. It is an exercise in destroying the nuclear family, and
mm,
it is an exercise in expanding the tax base. It's
mm.
not right. And we're having a conversation about the essence of what it is to be a woman. And we're living in a world where we're told that there is a thing called reproductive rights, reproductive to give birth, to give life, rights. And those words describe the right to kill your own child in the womb. Now that's fucking crazy. That is inverse. That is topsy fucking turvy
Mm.
that we live in a world now where men are being turned into women via mind control, conditioning, phosphates, things of this nature.
Mm.
Women are being told that their right is to kill what they create. And if they don't get the right to kill what they create, then they are somehow worse off. It's absolutely crazy. But it's so crazy that I do get the feeling that we're in the part of the movie where this is where everybody wakes up
Yeah,
because it's so fucking crazy.
it is
It's
a
so,
it's so, so, so crazy. And actually very grateful to be here for this time because I really feel like this is the time that I'm supposed to be here for. So, I'm really grateful for it. But this leads me to probably my first question for you.
first question.
Yeah.
In
I
my
don't
mind,
know.
yeah, the first question. What kind of podcaster are you? Yeah, man, go on. Obviously, a good one because
It's
we've had an
about,
unstructured conversation and it's been quite fun.
well, I'm glad. Um, uh, what was my
Scott,
question?
I don't know. Did you make notes?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Thank you. So it's about this attack on men. Okay,
Yeah.
I've been very, very interested in this because I'm interested in the attack on women and women's empowerment, right? And every time I say that, I'm reminded of the women's rights movement that was all just a total sham, right? So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm actually just talking about women being true to their God-given nature.
I suppose we have to be mindful that none of this is a transition to a beginning of a new. It is all remembering. That is an awakening isn't a linear process where you go from A to B. An
Mm,
awakening is where you go from wherever you are back to what you're meant to be.
mm,
So we're not empowering women. We're not helping men. We're not empowering women. We are simply helping them remember who they were and who they should be.
yes.
We're not rehabilitating. Well, no, we are rehabilitating men to an extent, but we're simply reminding ourselves of what our proper roles are, not
Yeah.
being afraid. You know, my wife is happy being a housewife and a mother.
Mm,
That's not a putting up with. That's not a being happy with lack. That's not making peace with a lack of opportunity to go out into the work world. None of that. She is aware at a very deep soul level that that is her job. That is literally what she's meant to be doing. And I'm aware of what my job is.
mm,
Ergo, we have a happy marriage
mm.
because everybody knows what they're meant to be doing. People like certainty. I mean, I'm okay with uncertainty, but everybody likes certainty as to what their roles are, what they're meant to be doing. But I've digressed. We had a question about the feminization of men.
Yeah, thank you. And it's so I just have to blurt this and then the question will come if that's okay. So I'm very aware that just in the most recent history, because we could talk on like all of history, and there's so many different angles that's coming to me right now. But so firstly, Okay. All right. All right. I have to get the number part out. It's screaming at me. So we've been under the 1000s for the last thousand years. This one energy, you're born on the first. So, but this global long-standing cult inverts everything. And this one energy, while it is the protector energy, like the fierce aggression, like I will stand up for, I will get in your face, I will fight if it's necessary, like so this is, but the one energy, the last thousand years have we've been dictated under this one energy, and it's been a very dominating, like, like you said, men have kind of taken over. Let's run the world, like all of this stuff, and that's the energy that we've been under. They've manipulated it because the one energy is very pure masculine energy. Obviously, they've
No.
masculine like manipulated that. We're now in the 2000s, and remember, I said the twos are a kind of love that hasn't existed on Earth.
Mm.
We're in the 2020s. So, yeah, which is why 2020, they see these things coming and they're constantly throwing them, like they just literally started throwing spaghetti at the walls at 2020 because the babies that are being born, particularly in the 2020s, them by virtue of just existing on the planet is raising the frequency.
A
So,
friend of mine does human design, and she said she has never seen so many manifestors
mm,
in life.
yeah.
It's like it's like two out of every three she's doing. In fact, no, she said all of them. She said all of them are
Mm,
manifest, or I forget what the modality is, but the one when you express. Not basically the one in, I think, manifestors and no, it's gone. But the really kind of high level ones in terms of communication style are 21% of the population. Every kid that's come through has been there.
and it's
They're
it's
anchors. They're coming out.
so I've been at births.
Mm.
I've been at the births of some of these 2020 babies, including my own. And I've also done readings for parents of babies. They want to know
Mm.
how to best parent their child based on their unique, right? And I tell you, like, these babies are like, they're out of this world level of like, so this energy is literally demanding their parents to heal. There a
Yes.
demand for it. It's like if they were born 10 years ago, if they were born in the 90s, even, the parents were not being called upon to do healing. I can tell you that. I was born in the
But
90s.
this is where it ends. This is where the cycle ends. And this is now
Exactly.
the sacred. I mean, this has always been the sacred responsibility of the parent. Me and my wife talk about this a lot, that we got together when I think I was 35, and she was, I don't know, late 20s maybe. She's had poor mental health. I've had poor mental health. And just at that point where we were at the end of the beginning of the healing journey, that's when we met.
Mm.
And we our job is to stop all of that trauma in its tracks.
Hmm.
You know, they come no further because that shit is not getting transferred onto the next generation.
Mm-mm.
And that's everybody's responsibility, which is why it's so important to get us into work and so important to get our kids into school, so important to get us in the fear pattern, because then we're reacting, not responding.
Hmm.
We're unconscious. Well,
Hmm.
I still, and I feel guilty, but oh, God bless her. She's not sleeping very well. And the other day she said, Daddy, don't be grumpy. And it almost broke my heart in two because I was reacting. No, wrong. I was reacting. I wasn't responding. I was being unconscious in the way I was behaving with my daughter. And
Mm.
it absolutely killed me
Mm.
for a minute. And then she smiled and all was well. But yes, there is an incumbent responsibility on everybody. There always has been, but absolutely right now, which is not to transfer our shit onto our new shining souls coming into this materium
Mm.
because they're atomic bombs of goodness. and they are anchoring the frequencies in.
Yeah.
And your spaghetti metaphor is perfect. They are monkeys throwing shit at a wall right now because they are absolutely terrified
Mm.
of what's happening. They
Hmm.
don't know what to do.
Mm-mm.
My mentor had a linear way of looking at this, which was in 2012. The first bits of light started to come and stay. And
Mm.
before that, it would come in, it was rejected. It would come in, it was rejected. We were too dark, we were too 3D, we were too resonant in their low frequencies. But in 2012, it happened. You know, that white to dark, right on the edge in the yin and the yang started happening.
And look at
And it's
that. Sorry, in 2012, there are two twos. And when you
exactly,
add 2012 together, you get to five. Well, five is the number of freedom and change.
it all starts stacking up, does it not?
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at Dolores Cannon.
Mm.
Is it Dolores Cannon? Did I get that right? There are a
It's,
couple of Doloreses kicking around the freedom movement.
it's either Dolores Cannon or Dolores Canning. I think you're
Forget. Lovely woman, big
right.
hair,
Mm.
all over Instagram. One of the easiest YouTube grifts, listeners, if you want those ad dollars, is to put Dolores Cannon in your title of your video and make it about 5D. And then you'll get loads of money. There you go. Take that from your Uncle Ben. But there is this sense that every wave we're getting is just another. Well, I think we're probably on the third wave now. That's what I'm told.
Mm.
And I'm doing some t-shirts, and one of them's going to be third wave, bitch. You know, just had to really rough you the fuck up. And
Mm.
the great thing about third wavers, I consider myself proudly a third waver,
Mm.
that until very recently, I was a proper person, you know, with an expensive car, with a business, who wore wax jackets and could speak about politics and was upstanding and all of these things. And I think that's great because now I'm talking about women having portals in their bellies. And people are going, hang on, up until 3 years ago, that guy spoke what I would call sense. Now he's saying this. What the fuck is up with that? And that is a great dynamic. And from a strategic perspective, if this is an information war and a spiritual war, which it is, that is a really, really good weapon.
Mm.
So third wave, bitch. No, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing anything with my hands. Stay down. But yes, third wave, bitch. Absolutely. It's happening. It's on. And every kid that comes out, it's just another, it's just another bit of earth on their grave.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Wow. No, let's not talk about death because ultimately we're going to have to forgive a lot, aren't we? And we're going to have to say, you were programmed. We understand. Come over here. But my big worry is the parents of those kids that were injected with the death shot. That's really what worries me,
Mm.
and I'm not sure how to handle that one. There's going to be a
Mm.
lot of people who require a direct connection to God at some point in the near future, and I'm told it's going to be. Rachel told me October this year is going to be the real blow off top. In my hands again, the blow off top with the jibby jab, with the gene editing bioweapon, and you can already see it starting to percolate up,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of influences backtracking
Yeah.
themselves, safe and effective, and all those sorts of things. But when those people realize that they were mind controlled into destroying the health of their children, well, can you imagine? Can you imagine coming back to mothers? Can you imagine the power of all of those mothers roused to action? And this probably won't be a worldwide story, but one of the reasons that the Troubles in Northern Ireland juddered to a halt was from a tactical perspective that MI5 had the IRA riddled with informants, but also because the mothers got involved. There's a wonderful BBC documentary or a kind of docudrama about a woman in Dublin who simply said, there are too many children dying.
Mm.
And then she started making trouble until such a time that the governments couldn't ignore it.
Mm.
So yeah, mother's roused. That's a hell of a thing. That's going to be a sight to see. It's very sad that it's going to come from something so abominable and satanic and nasty and horrible, but it's going to be a sight to see. All of those women realizing their power, standing in their power, and saying, I don't give a fuck how much money you have. I don't give a fuck that you have the institutionalized right of violence. I don't give a fuck you can incarcerate me. I don't give a fuck you can find me. I don't give a fuck that you can knock down my door. I will not be cowed because you made me harm my child, and that will not stand.
Mm.
That would be an interesting evolution in this process.
Can you imagine? You know, you shared about your daughter looking up at you and saying, "Don't be grumpy, Daddy."
Yeah.
Imagine a child looking up at their parent, at their mum, at their dad, and going, "Why did you do that to me, mummy?"
Yeah. They're always crying. The pictures, the films of children being vaccinated, they're always crying.
It's against their will. They,
Yeah. So when our daughter was slightly younger, she did have the first load of the childhood vaccines,
mm,
and I wasn't there, thank God. And I just remember my wife saying, "She just screamed. She just screamed." And I thought to myself, I was in that middling period between accepting what was going on and realizing I was going to have to turn against everything that I thought and being happy and comfortable in the old world. And vaccines were one of those things like, and this is what we're going to have to face the cognitive fog we're going to have to face around vaccines, around religion, around wars, around the final solution, around everything. We're going to have to do some things that would have made us feel like fucking crazies. But at that time, I wasn't willing to face the vaccine piece, the generalized vaccine piece. And now yeah, I feel fucking shocking about it.
mm,
Absolutely shocking about it. But yes, I can't imagine what that is going to be like when people realize what they've done.
mm,
But to face it, and we will, and it will be fine. If it's not fine, it means that the process hasn't finished yet because we are going towards a place of absolute, unconditional, fully embodied, fully integrated love, and it's going to be fantastic. But up until that point, it's going to be quite challenging. But don't worry, you've got
Uncle
me
Ben's
and
here.
Uncle Ben's here, kids. I mean,
Uncle
it's
Ben's here.
with Fergus O'Connor Greenwood, who's an author of 180, who I interviewed at the podcast. And he came down to my neck of the woods, and we sat and we had a burger and a couple of drinks. They were all soft drinks because I don't drink alcohol anymore. But we were talking about, what's going to happen to the media zeitgeist after the awakening? What kind of situation comedies are we going to have? What kind of dramas are we going to have? It's
Mm,
going to be absolutely crazy. We get to reinvent literally everything.
mm,
Will football make it? Will Australian rules football make it? Probably not, because it doesn't make sense. But will American football make it? What kind of world are we going to have? And we were talking about kind of situation comedy we might write about witch finders in London, or people who have to go out and deal with demonic possessions going on. You know, right, mate, you okay? Yeah, I just dealt with a class four fucking possession the other day in Crouch End. It was amazing. But yeah, what kind of world are we going to have? And it's going to be great, but yeah, I think we have to make peace with the idea there is going to be some trauma going through. But then again, well, how do you feel about this? Because back in 2021, I was absolutely sure that we were going to be living in a post-apocalyptic
mm.
um, shit show where orphans were running around because their parents had been killed by the vax and all this sort of stuff. But things seem to have shifted. We seem to have shifted onto another timeline that's slightly more light-filled and slightly less traumatic and less blue beam, more global awakening. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And I think that's also part of the awakening process. You kind of swing from one extreme of the pendulum to the other. And, you know, the waking up journey is really like, whoa, that's what's going on. Well, yeah, everything's going to fucking hell, because that's going on. And um, you kind of, I remember we were, um, we were living in Tasmania. I don't know if you know, but it usually gets left off the map a lot because it's at the bottom
Yeah,
of
I'm
Australia.
seeing devil.
Yeah.
That's
So,
what that little fellow.
so, so we were living in Tasmania. It's where Ollie was born. We actually free birthed him at home by ourselves. And
Oh,
yeah, it was epic. And there was definite portal energy. I saw visions. It was, anyway, story for another time. But um, everyone in our families got vaccinated,
mm,
and everyone that we knew was vaccinated. It was like we had learnt this giant dirty secret about the world, and no one else around. We were just so much isolation in this knowing, and it was living like a double life. Like we know the truth, but we now have to show up and operate with everybody else, like, like
yeah, yeah.
nothing. And
I've
it's
been
just,
staring at my parents, wondering why they're still alive.
yeah,
My,
yeah.
they
And
aren't, they're beautiful people, but they aren't the healthiest in the world. And I've been thinking, you've had 3 jabs.
yeah,
And why aren't you dead? I love you still here, but why aren't you dead?
yeah.
I'm not going to escape it soon because I told my parents I had the jab. And I still feel bad about that. But I was working at a vaccination center,
I
which
have heard this story and it gives me the shivers every single time. And then also, sorry to speak over you, but um, you also shared with, and sorry to point a pen at your face, you shared with Madeline Greenhill
yeah,
about the experience that you had in those pods. Oh,
yes,
I got full body shivers when you shared that story, knowing what your numbers are and that, yeah, because this this energy that you the 2911 is uh I'm not speaking about ego or whatsoever. Okay, but this may come across as ego, but it is literally like God consciousness. And um it has a tendency to absorb suffering that
mm,
exists in its surroundings. And this energy always feels like they're the problem in the environment because they feel the suffering everywhere,
mm,
and they're made to feel often like they are the problem. But
yeah,
yeah, but actually, the reason why this energy comes to the earth is to bring this frequency, this God consciousness, high level, the frequency of, like you said before, unconditional, infinite, boundless, pure
mm,
love. So they were never the problem, they were always the solution. When you get programmed in the programs, you're going to think that you're the problem. And when you do that, you absorb it all around you. And you spoke with Madeline about something left your body.
yeah.
I
It's
was
an
like,
interesting.
whoa.
The medical doctor I mentioned earlier, she's also a psychic. It's
That is
very,
the
very,
best kind of medical doctor to have.
yeah. Well, she talk about double lives. Talk about living 3D and 5D at the same time. Christ.
Wow.
And she lives in Switzerland, and it's not a nice place. Well, it's a lovely place, but it's not a nice place.
Mm.
And we were talk. I first met her. I think November last year. I flew over, and we were talking about ascension. I said, "Listen, what did you think when you first saw me? When you first met me?" She said, "Well, Ben, I knew you were a light soul, but I saw that you were carrying all of the fear and all of the trauma and everything on your shoulders."
Mm.
And that makes real sense in the context of what you've just said there. And there's nothing egoic about talking about God consciousness existing within humans or a human. There's nothing egoic about that at all, because ultimately God consciousness exists in us all. That is the ever fucking point.
Mm.
That the game is to realize that.
Mm.
And I don't see that as egoic at all. And I will happily talk about this is an only recently thing. What's interesting about this process and the position I'm in is that I get to talk to people about what I'm thinking, feeling, and seeing and actioning, but they are things that have only recently I have thought have happened to me or I have felt. And it's only recently I've come to the not come to the conclusion because it's something intellectually I've always known within this period, but only recently have I embodied without thinking it was ego. And again, there's the narcissism trap. There's another one of the programs and the
Mm.
bits of the that we are allowed to embody God and know that we have God within and still exist and know that we're not being a big-headed motherfucker or whatever. That makes absolute sense. Can you hear that? You can't hear that tool going on outside. There's someone with a pneumatic drill. You can't hear that. No, we're good. You're looking at me
No,
mysterious.
no. Could you hear Lola? She was chewing on a toy and it was going beep, 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 beep. Could you hear
I
that?
didn't. No, I didn't.
Oh, that's good.
The podcast gods are smiling on us right now. We're going to have to do this in a community cafe, which would have been an absolute shit show. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with saying I have God within me. You
Mm.
can say I have God if you like. It doesn't matter. It's true. And I suppose it's another program, but we think of God as a big bearded man with the power of life and death. I am a jealous God. But actually, God's just everything. So if God is everything, and it is, spoiler, then why wouldn't we be God?
Mm.
One of the things I'm doing at the moment, I'm writing a book, and I'm going to have to tell my parents the truth about my vaccination status because it's there in the second chapter. And the first, I think the prologue is just called Made of God, because we
Mm.
are made of God, all consciousness.
How uncanny is that your first chapter in your book is made of God and this is the energy that is you can't make this stuff.
Really uncanny. Me and my wife keep saying this. Isn't it weird that? No. On
Mm.
reflection, no, it's not weird at all. Isn't
Mm.
it weird you met that person and had that conversation about that thing? No, not at all. That is the bridge of incidences doing its work.
Mm.
All you have to do is take action and not get attached to the consequences and live in light and openness and love, and we'll be absolutely fine. This stuff isn't complicated. It isn't complicated at all. It's made complicated by the egoic imprint that we all walk around with. It's made complicated by these emotional programs that are put on us.
Mm.
And make a distinction between emotions and feelings. Emotions are not real. Feelings are real. Feelings come from the heart. Emotions come from up here. Therefore, they're corrupted. Therefore, they're just stories, and we can quite happily ignore them. And again, we're talking about kind of recent revelations and the position I'm in to be able to talk about these recent revelations. I only just started to quieten the monkey mind, the chatter, this ridiculous thing that we share our brain with, that if they were our friends, we would drop them and we would ghost them quite quickly. But it used to be that I would have a negative thought, which manifestly was not mine because I'm not the voice, I'm the observer of the voice. And my reaction would be to tell it to fuck off. Fuck off, get out of my fucking head.
Mm.
But the reality is that all that's going to do is tell the universe that I want more of whatever fuck off means.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to Uncle Ben, kids. Never tell anyone you hate them because your unconscious is just going to listen to that and go, well, they hate themselves. So I'm going to give them more hate. The universe doesn't judge. It doesn't judge at all. If you want bad, it will give you bad. If you want good, it will give you good. And it will not discriminate. But only recently, and this was a book that I read at the behest of a very good friend who I'm starting a training with business soon called Upgrade, which everyone will hear about and get fucking sick of quite soon. She made me read Michael Singer, The Surrender Experiment.
Mm.
It's a classic read. I sped read it in 2 days. It's a fantastic read. And it's an economics major down in Florida called Michael or Mickey, who just one day thinks, do I have a voice in my head? And if I do, is it me or is it something else? And that propelled him on a journey to setting up a temple, writing several books, having a medical software company, bizarrely enough, because he just realized that his job was to surrender to the bridge of instances, to surrender to the ebbs and flows of the universe,
Mm.
the absolute expression of Wu Wei. And when he did this, everything just started happening for him because he ignored the voices. He saw them for what they are, mindless chatter, programmed to restrict us from becoming our true self. And only by reading this in the last couple of days have I actually begun to meditate properly.
Oh,
In the last 3 days, I've enjoyed meditation.
that's
And I now identify as someone who meditates. And that's huge in terms
that's
of essential, fucking massive.
it's massive. That's
I know.
incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you. And
What
I
a
didn't think
brilliant journey.
having a conversation where somebody congratulates me on being able to meditate and me going, yes, that's actually a thing. I should be congratulated.
Yes, it is.
You
It's
know what I mean?
massive. I totally, totally know what you mean. It would be so. Do you meditate in nature?
I have tried recently, yes, the garden. I have to do it a certain hour because there's something about lower middle class England that means that everybody has to. There's a kind of there's a ripple effect on urban roads, whereas somebody does their garden a couple of weeks later, somebody else will go, "Oh, I'd like to do that," and we end up with this round robin of tradesmen coming in at 7:15 and making a great deal of noise. So
Mm.
yes, I've tried meditating in the garden at night, and it's great. It's absolutely fantastic.
At night.
In the city the other day. Well, in the evening. In the
In the
evening when
evening.
it's
I just went straight to there's a full moon and wow, this is really like you've really
okay,
mastered meditation.
and bats. No,
Come to me, my children.
I'm trying to embody, man. Not but I did it in the city the other day in Bath. I was I was sent an email by a very, very talented guy called Rory Duff, who's one of the
Oh, that's so exciting. I know exactly who that is. Are you going to have him on your podcast?
I've
Stop,
asked. I've asked. I want to get him and Rachel on to talk about ley lines because
stop
he's a
it.
Dow
Yes.
and she
Yes.
can and
I
what a
have
great
sent him the same email. Yeah. Before I even recorded my first episode, I was sent him the
fantastic. And he's
Awesome.
doing a group meditation on June 19th at a place called Oliver's Castle near Devizes in Wiltshire. It's about 45 minutes from me.
Wow.
Where it was, and I've sent Rachel some pictures, and well, she had already sent me some pictures, and that place is covered with ley lines. There was a battle there in the English Civil War. You can
Wow.
probably you can understand why the battle was there. And what Rory does is get people together to meditate on the lines.
Mm.
I sent them an email about Lay Love Down. Um, and because I'm a noob, because I'm kind of not making this up as I go along, but I'm kind of discovering things on a Monday and talking about them on a Wednesday.
You're remembering.
Say again? That
You're
word, yeah, there we go. There we go. I said I used imprecise language. I said, at Lay Love Down, we want to get people to sing on the lays in order to raise the vibration. I think were the words I used. And because Rory is he has more of a scientific, no, just because he's smarter. He said, no, that's not what you're doing. Ley lines have a specific frequency. That's what they keep. You cannot raise the vibration. I was like, fuck, I'm a noob. That's not what I meant at all. And I wrote back and said, no, that's absolutely not what we're trying to do. We're trying to increase the energy being kind of plumbed into them. It's like, yeah, that's exactly what you should be doing. But the Bath is a very odd place. It's a very odd place,
Mm.
and I think that's why I'm here. Bath is set out on Masonic lines, as you're probably aware. So if you look at it from the top, you can see keys, you can see suns, you can see all sorts, and that's absolutely not a coincidence, and nor I think was it done because that was the fashion at the time. King Bladud, who founded the city, I think there was some Antillean stuff in his bloodline. I
Mm.
recently found out that Colonel Edward Mandell House, who was the advisor to Roosevelt, who started the Federal Reserve System, Mandell House was one of the architects of that system and is an architect of the Social Security system, which is the modern iteration of the birth certificate energy capture, the most unbelievably satanic thing. ever invented. He was sent to Bath to go to school by his father, where his father was from Bath. So Mandel House went from Virginia, got on a boat as a child, and was sent to Bath for schooling, and then went back. I'm thinking, why? Why would that happen? Why would you send your boy here to be alone if it wasn't for something weird, nefarious, important, etc., etc.? So
Mm.
that's one thing I need to find out. And also, and this is, this is the bridge of instances. We have a Jewish cemetery in Bath, which is closed apart from 3 days a year. And they have open days. And I picked up this magazine, had a quick read in a garden centre, and it had a bit about it. And it talked about the types of Jews that were there. And they were the type of Jews that aren't Jews. It was the Ashkenazi. I was
Mm.
like, oh, hold the fucking phone. So here we are in a city that's set out on Masonic lines where God knows how many ley lines intersect. And we've got a community of Ashkenazi Jews who aren't really Jews, they're Khazars, who are the fucking bad boys in this movie. What the hell is going on here? So I'm sat in Bath City Centre at the behest of Rory, who said it was the confluence of the ley lines was the Abbey courtyard just by the Abbey to the south. And I'm sat on this bench, and for the first time, I realise I can feel it. I can feel power coming off the ley lines. Again, I could be making it up. It could be a story, it could be a perspective reality. I don't think so, but I could feel it coming up. So I had a quick meditation in the middle of the city, kind of sat there thinking, I hope no one I know walks past. I hope no one I know walks. Got that done. And then I went to an obelisk. There's an obelisk on a traffic island to the north of the Abbey. And there are two of them in the city. And you know that nobody puts an obelisk anywhere
Mm.
without meaning it. It's the phallus, it's Osiris's phallus. The one in the Vatican is there to literally fuck the world. That's not very nice. So I went up to this obelisk and put my hand on it and instantly started to feel sick, started to get headache, started to realize I was in the presence of darkness. And off I went, and I felt absolutely fine straight away. So yeah, there's definitely something going on with LAs, and there's definitely something going on in this city, without a doubt. But I'm sure that's repeated in a lot of places. I
Yeah.
mean, the United Kingdom is the evil center of this entire system, or it is right now. I think it's being moved probably to Kazakhstan, but they wanted to use Ukraine. It's probably not going to work out now. Spoiler. But yeah, no idea how what the denouement to that particularly thought process is, but it is.
I don't even think I asked a question still. So
I really-
I think you've asked me a question, which I definitely have not answered.
I chose to answer in a way that was completely inappropriate to the original question.
But everything that you shared, it confirms for me, I do these readings for people and stuff, and I get these, I don't know, Rachel calls it psychic ability. And for whatever reason, there's a resistance to that. Like, I don't know, maybe that's my own programming, like,
Exactly what you mean. And I've met people who are manifestly shaman,
yeah,
but they're not
but
just.
yeah. So, I do readings for people, and this just stuff floods through me. And one of the things that floods through is that people of your energy type, the 2911 too, there's so much that I could say about this. But they're put, they are specifically put in the places that need that love
Mm,
and healing the most. You
mm,
talked about being able to feel. Well, the nine sits nicely in the middle of that combination of numbers, and the nine energies. Um, this is the what I was talking about in the little reading I gave your wife with their mode of communication is energy. So they are feelers of energy. They constantly are exchanging energy. They absorb energy, so the fact that you can feel the energy of the ley lines, you can feel the energy that exists in the obelisk. Um, yes, 1,000,000%. That's not made up. That's not crazy. This is because you actually harness and have those abilities.
mm.
Does that make
Cool.
sense? Yeah.
It does. A bit of a shock. I have to be honest. It's
A
a bit of a
shock.
shock. Well, to go from, I don't know, it's like graduating, I suppose. It's like learning about this stuff and reading about this stuff, and then going out into the world, into the field, into the ulu, and realizing that not only is it all real, but you can perceive it as well, and that there are multiple dimensions of multiple shapes to the world that you hadn't considered existed before.
Mm,
That there are layers, and it all adds on and adds on and piles on until you don't remember who you were anymore, and you don't really remember the world as it was.
yeah.
And in writing this book, I've remembered what it was like. Um, but I've remembered it in a way that I am talking about another person. I'm
Yeah.
talking about an avatar that, or a costume that was previously worn or lived actually and embodied, but now does not exist anymore.
So,
And I feel nothing but love and compassion,
mm, mm,
but that person is dead.
yeah. It's being someone who's a survivor of many things, struggled with that word too, survivor.
Hmm.
Um, uh,
Why? So why would you struggle with that word? What's wrong with that word?
because it has victim connotations. I've never considered
No,
myself as a victim. To have survived something means I must have been a victim. And there was, to some extent, the physical act of being a victim of, but there's the meaning of being a victim and living life identifying with victimhood and being a victim in that sense. So I,
remember that, regardless of our level of awareness, we still tell ourselves stories. We've got to be careful. I mean, if you were a survivor of a house fire or a train crash or a road traffic accident, you wouldn't think of yourself as a victim of that and see that as a negative thing. You just say, I'm a survivor of that,
mm,
that situation, that context. Just because you were subject to a extremely negative experience at the hand of somebody else,
mm,
and that you were oppressed in that moment and made to do whatever in that moment, that doesn't make you a victim. It just means that you were subject to a force that you could not at that point stand up to or control. And that you survived that experience doesn't automatically bestow victimhood. So no, I don't think there's, I think, I think there's a problem when not you, but when society, what's the word I'm looking for? This is all to do with the victim hierarchy. So I absolutely see your point that we never talk about, how do I say this correctly? So people who relish and revel in having survived a thing and then take that into their identity and make it part of them, then yes, I have a problem with the word survivor. I am an abuse survivor, and I'm going to go out and live in the community of abuse survivors and forever relive the event and talk about the event because that's who I have become. Okay, fair enough. That's victimhood. That is identifying with your victimhood. That is making the negative experience that you've had a fundamental part of who you are. Whereas it's not a fundamental part of who you are. It may inform what you have become. It may have been sent to provide resistance to push you towards a certain outcome on a certain path, but it's not part of who you are. So you can survive it and not make it part of your psyche. I
mm,
think that things. I mean, I had a wild, and try this one on for size, because people will read about this in the book, but I had an abuse experience. And I was thinking about forgiveness. I was thinking about function. I was thinking about what we're sent and what we ask for to develop when we incarnate in this materium. And I thought to myself, well, actually, at some point, if you really go down on the rabbit hole on this, at some point, you must have been sat in the Akashic records or the briefing room or whatever and gone, right, what do I want out of this particular existence? I've done this a couple of times. I've been abundant. I've been happy. I've been a boy. I've been a girl. At some point, if you follow it, we must have said, right, I'm going to have a sexual abuse experience because I want to know what it's like to transmute the trauma of that experience out. I want to know what it's like to survive that. I want to know what it's like to work through that. And I might not, I might kill myself because it's not very nice, or I might get through it. And at some point, you must have had a soul contract, and I must have had a soul contract with my abuser. We've got together in an anteroom with their Akashic records. Are you up for abusing me? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Did you really want me to? Because that's pretty fucking shit. I've seen that before. Yeah, no, let's do this. So at some point we live in a consent-based universe. And I'm
Mm.
not saying anybody could consent or not consent to that sort of thing in the 3D, because that's oppressive power, that's coercion, that's control, that's disgusting, that's dark. But back in the 5, the 6, the 7, where it is, we must have consented to that. And that's a really fucking weird concept to wrap my head around. And again, I'm not saying that anybody who says that sexual abuse is a consenting act in the 3D, it's not. And it's usually about power, which is disgusting and dark. But at some point, we must have gone, okay, I'll give that a go. It's a bizarre thought. Does that trigger you? It triggered me when I thought about that for the first time.
150 million%. And this is something that I actually talk about a lot, particularly when I'm doing readings for people, because it helps to give context to things that they have experienced in their life. I've done a lot of readings for a lot of different variations of survivors.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, we all sign a contract before we come into each lifetime. And my theory and it's purely my theory that I've developed along the way, and that is
Mm.
that, Earth being here in this very material plane, the human way is to experience things physically. It's the only, sorry?
Say that again. The human.
The human way is to experience things physically.
Yes.
And it's the only way that we know, whether we should continue something or not continue something, or everything to do with this realm that we're in is perceived very, very, very physically. If I can't see it, then I can't believe it.
Mhm.
And so we have to physically go through the thing. I really believe that we cycle through the numbers 1 to 9 at a lifetime level. So this lifetime, you've signed up for life 29, 11, 2. Do you know what I mean? You come in with this specific energy, and that tells us so much. But each lifetime, there's a specific intention. There's specific lines that we kind of need to. I like to look at it as like one gigantic lineage of healing. And to heal, you need to know what cycles, what pathways. You need to be aware of those things, because otherwise you won't know what you're here to complete.
Yeah,
And
100%.
and so the human way is to experience things physically. If we don't physically experience it, it's not in our awareness.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
it's like you go to a restaurant and the waiter will deliver a plate to you holding mittens and say, "Don't touch this. It's hot."
But no, I'm gonna touch this. No, I'll touch it. But it's okay. No, I'm mittens. Okay.
Everyone
Okay.
touches the damn plate. Everyone does. But how hot? How hot could it be?
Yeah.
That
How
is the
bad?
nature
That
of
guy's a real
humanity.
person with
Yeah.
his fucking waiter's mittens. No,
But
absolutely. I have to see it for myself. I have to feel it for myself.
yeah,
I mean, this is being a parent is got to stop saying parent. Being a dad, pair who rents. They don't belong to us.
yeah.
Um, got to stop saying parents. But that's one other thing about being a mother or father is that you cannot tell them. I've done a lot of drugs in my life, a lot of drugs in appropriate company. My wife loves talking about it. Oh, Ben's done apart from heroin. Oh, thanks, love. But I know full well that when I sit either of them down and say, listen, at some point when you go to university or live in a big city, whatever, you're going to come into contact with drugs. Somebody's going to tell you it's a good idea. Somebody is going to make you feel peer pressure that will beguile you into thinking you have to do this thing. Now, I have done a lot of this, and I can tell you there's nothing there but pain, sadness, emptiness, etc., etc.
Mm.
Here is the boiling soup. I'm wearing the biggest mittens you've ever seen. You're gonna be presented with that. Okay, yeah, no, I'm absolutely not that. But it can't be that bad.
Mm.
Gonna
Mhm.
have to find out for themselves. Or God willing, that won't happen. And I think the reality is I'm worrying about something that isn't, because I know full well my kids are bright and shining, and they're probably just going to levitate around the place. Hey, like the 1900s were in fact the 900s. Have a nice day, Dad. Oh, for fuck's sake. Has she done it again? Yeah, she's done it again. She changed the fucking timeline. Did she talk about San Francisco Library again? Yeah. But that's what it's going to be for our kids. That's going to be being a mother or father in the new age. It's going to be absolutely hilarious.
Yeah.
You know, Dad, I was joking last week when I said Hitler was a good guy. Oh no. Was he in the Rothschilds after all? Yeah, I was fucking with you. Bad times. There we are. My love, I'm gonna have to go soon.
I know.
I have to do work. I have to do things that put me in a position where I can send people invoices so they can give me money. It's how I fund my lifestyle. You've probably heard of the process.
Yes, I have. Um, I just have had so much fun.
Me
I
too.
feel
Me too.
like we could talk for hours. I feel like there's meat that we could get into, there's meat.
Well, we will get into that because you're coming on mine week after next.
Yes,
So pick up where we left off
very
and
excited.
get
Maybe
in.
then I'll be able to ask you a question on your podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you notice? Did you notice just then I went into my professional podcaster's voice? Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny? Dear, oh dear. But yeah, absolutely. So you're coming on the 20th,
Yeah.
and we will continue wherever it is that we've left off. And yeah, do the role reversal thing as well. But it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being the host, for inviting me into your home and letting me interact with your dog. And
You're welcome. I'm supposed to say this part, but I'm supposed to say.
oh, sorry, yeah,
Ben, thank you so much for blessing us all with your presence and for sharing yourself so openly, so authentically, so truthfully, and for leading us and guiding us and sharing with us truth and love and wisdom. I so appreciate you, your journey, your everything that you are doing that is just you are being propelled to do, but that you are surrendering to that process. That is a humongous testament to your spirit and to who you are. And so, thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure and an absolute privilege, feels like an understatement, to exchange energy with you this evening, morning, afternoon.
really interesting choice of words there, propelled, because I have to say, it is like being fired out of a fucking cannon.
Yeah, and your ass is on fire.
Man found. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.